You're walking through Rome in 1656, and suddenly you see a figure with a bird-like beak, glass eyes, and a long black cloak approaching. People don't call them a doctor, they call them an omen. A cold rain taps the stone like nervous fingers. We are in Rome, 1656. The city is still beautiful, domes and bell towers rising above narrow streets, but the beauty feels sealed under glass, like a relic in a case. Doors are shut, shutters are bolted. People move quickly, faces half hidden, eyes always scanning for one thing: the mask. Not a carnival mask, not a costume. A face that looks like a bird's beak, long and curved, with glass eyes that don't blink. It appears at the end of an alley, and the alley empties. It steps past a shrine candle, and the flame shivers. You can hear whispers before you see it. Plague Doctor. To us, centuries away, the Plague Doctor mask is horror iconography. A symbol, a spooky silhouette printed on posters and video games. But here, in 1656, it is not a symbol. It is a job, and it is an object people cling to because they have nothing else. Let's slow time down and hold this artifact in our hands, not to sensationalize suffering, but to understand what it meant when the world's logic was different. Because the Plague Doctor mask wasn't born from a love of fear. It was born from a theory of survival, a theory called miasma. In the 17th century, many Europeans believed disease traveled through poisoned air, bad smells rising from rot, sewage, crowded rooms, stagnant water. Miasma was invisible, but its presence felt obvious. Where there was stench, people died. Where there was fresh air, they sometimes lived. So if death rides the wind, what do? You armor the breath. That beak, the most memorable part of the Plague Doctor mask, was not designed to be monstrous. It was designed to be a chamber, a container, a portable air purifier, built from what the era could offer: herbs, spices, flowers, resins. Aromatics meant to fight corruption in the air. Imagine stuffing the beak with dried rosemary, mint, cloves, camphor, maybe even vinegar-soaked sponge. Imagine believing, truly believing, that the smell of these things could block the invisible poison. To modernize, it seems naive. But consider the alternative: no antibiotics, no germ theory, no clear explanation for why one home gets spared and the next home is wiped out. People didn't refuse science. They reached for the best model they had and built objects to match it. The Plague Doctor's outfit often extended beyond the mask: a long coat, sometimes waxed or treated to resist moisture, gloves, boots, a hat that signaled the role, and the cane or staff to examine patients at a distance, to lift clothing, to point, to prod without touching. Every piece is a boundary, and boundaries were everything. Because plague wasn't just illness, it was social collapse. It rewrote rules. It decided which families remained families, which neighbors remained neighbors, which priests could enter which rooms, which bodies got names, and which bodies became numbers. When a Plague Doctor walked the street, the outfit announced something terrifying and practical at the same time. Someone is sick nearby, and someone is being paid to stand close enough to find out how sick. Here's a truth that makes this mask even heavier with meaning. Plague doctors were often hired by cities, not necessarily the best physicians. Sometimes they were young doctors trying to build reputations. Sometimes they were outsiders. Sometimes they were simply the ones willing to take the risk for the salary, the lodging, the promised protections. They lived with death as a schedule. In Rome's plague year, the city attempted quarantines, controlled movement, regulated burials, tried to separate the healthy from the suspected, and the suspected from the confirmed. The mask became part of that system, not as magic, but as uniform. A uniform gives authority. Authority gives compliance. Compliance gives a chance, sometimes. And yet the same uniform also did something else. It turned a human being into a walking omen. Think about what it felt like to be a mother hearing footsteps outside her door, then that knock, then the creak of wood, and a face with glass eyes enters the room. You don't see compassion first, You see beak and lenses. You see distance. You see a person who has already accepted the possibility of your death. The plague doctor mask solved a practical fear of inhaling poisoned air, but created a psychological horror. It erased the doctor's face. It removed expression. It made empathy harder to read. It is one of history's most striking examples of how protective gear can protect the body while unsettling the soul. Now, was it effective? Here's where the story becomes more complicated and more human. The beak's herbs likely did not filter plague in the way people hoped, because the primary driver of bubonic plague involves a bacterium and often flea vectors. But parts of the outfit might have offered accidental benefits. Covering skin reduces bites. Limiting direct contact reduces transmission of other diseases. Using a cane reduces touching. Keeping distance helps, especially in crowded homes. In other words, the theory was wrong, but some behaviors were right. History is full of that. People can arrive at safer outcomes for reasons that aren't scientifically accurate, yet still reduce risk. But even if the outfit helped sometimes, it did not offer certainty. Nothing did. So the mask became more than a tool. It became a ritual object, a visible declaration that a person was attempting to control the uncontrollable. And when people can't control the plague, they control signs. They control sound, bells, prayers, announcements. They control smell, incense, smoke, vinegar. They control objects, amulets, candles, cloth, and the mask. The beak points forward like a weapon, but it is not made to attack. It is made to defend a fragile idea, that you can keep death outside the lungs. Look closer at the lenses. Glass eyes are not just eerie, they're practical. They shield from splashes, from droplets, from whatever the era feared might jump from patient to doctor. But the glass also creates a strange illusion. The doctor becomes inhuman, an instrument rather than a person. And that's part of why the plague doctor mask survives in our imagination. Because it's a contradiction you can't unsee. It's medicine shaped like a monster. It's care performed through fear. It's protection that looks like punishment. Now, let's step into a small Roman room. The air is thick, not only with sickness, but with anxious life. A bowl of water that no one drinks from, a half-burned candle, a string of prayer beads, a scarf soaked in vinegar hung near the bed. A family stands back, their bodies angled away, as if plague has a direction. And then the plague doctor enters. He doesn't rush to the bedside. He positions himself. He speaks through layers. His voice is muffled, partly by cloth, partly by the sheer weight of the moment. He asks questions. He observes the swellings. He checks the fever. He recommends isolation if possible, bleeding if believed appropriate, herbs and poultices, maybe lancing if it comes to it. Some advice is desperate, some is harmful, some is a sincere attempt, and the family watches the mask more than they watch the doctor's hands. Because the mask is the thing that tells them what time it is. If the mask is here, then time is short. But here's the part we rarely say aloud when we use this object as spooky decoration. Behind that beak was a person breathing hard. A person who knew the statistics in their bones, even if they didn't have numbers. A person who smelled herbs all day until the scent stopped feeling like protection and started feeling like a reminder of the lie they needed to tell themselves to keep working. To walk toward infected homes day after day requires more than gear. It requires a story that makes the risk bearable. The plague doctor mask was part of that story. It gave structure, it gave identity, it gave a boundary between me and the plague, even if the boundary was thin. Over time, the mask's look spread beyond one outbreak, beyond one city. It entered art and memory. It shifted from tool to archetype. And centuries later, we inherit the silhouette, often without the context. So let's restore the context. This mask belongs to a world where bad air was the enemy, where the smell of herbs was hope, where a uniform could keep a city from panicking completely, where fear and care walked together, step for step, down rain-wet stone. If you want the simplest summary of the plague doctor mask, it's this. It is an object built to make the invisible visible. Invisible danger, visible defense. invisible contagion, visible courage, or visible dread, depending on who is looking. And the beak, that long chamber of herbs, becomes a strange time capsule of human logic under pressure. Not dumb logic, survival logic. The kind of logic you build when you are trying to keep your breath in your chest one more night. So the next time you see the plague doctor mask on a poster or a costume, remember Rome, 1656. Remember the shuttered windows, the whispering streets, the rain. And remember that this frightening face was once a promise, however imperfect, that someone would walk into the danger because everyone else could not. History doesn't only live in crowns and swords. Sometimes it lives in a beak full of rosemary.